Welcome to the case of the Pneumatic Post, a Sherlock Holmes adventure from the series The Clockwork Conspiracies. Sherlock Holmes and the Age of Innovation, playing in the year 1895. It is with some astonishment that I find myself addressing you across the years, through the medium of these Edison wax cylinders. Discovered, I am told, sealed away at the Royal Society, they represent my private audio notes, capturing details perhaps too raw for my published accounts. They chronicle investigations undertaken with Mr. Sherlock Holmes during that remarkable period, the closing decades of the 19th century, an age of innovation, alive with the hum of electricity and new machines. Yet progress cast long shadows, and Holmes often confronted the dark side of invention, the very clockwork conspiracies where science became a tool for crime. These recordings offer a glimpse into those unique challenges. Allow me now to recount the first of these extraordinary episodes from that era, an affair involving London's burgeoning subterranean communication network. I call this adventure the case of the Pneumatic Post. Chapter. A thick, yellow November fog pressed against our Baker Street windows, muffling the clatter of hansom cabs to a ghostly rumble. Inside, the fire crackled, but did little to lift the gloom settled upon London, or upon Sherlock Holmes. He lay curled on the sofa in abstract thought, violin silent beside him. The monotony was broken by firm footsteps ascending the 17 stairs, followed by a decisive rap upon our door. Mrs. Hudson announced our visitor, and a moment later we were joined by a figure quite unexpected. Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle stood in the doorway. Perhaps 30, dressed practically but well, her gaze was direct, intelligent. An air of quiet competence about her commanded respect, dispelling surprise at her representing Scotland Yard. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, my apologies for the intrusion," answered Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. "Pray be seated, Inspector. Any visitor who brings a problem is welcome upon such a dreary afternoon." "What official perplexity brings you from the Yard?" explained Sherlock Holmes. She took the chair opposite Holmes, declining my offer of tea with a polite but firm shake of her head. The firelight flickered across her composed features as she began. "It concerns a series of jewel thefts, Mr. Holmes. 3 incidents in the past fortnight, all within Hatton Garden. The value is considerable, but the method, it baffles us entirely." Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle replied, "Stumped Scotland Yard. That suggests something quite out of the common." Dr. John Watson added, "Precisely, Doctor. In each case, valuable gems vanished from securely locked safes of the highest quality. No forced entry, no tampering, no witnesses. Nothing. The official force is utterly frustrated." Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle said. Holmes leaned forward, lethargy vanished. The languid dilettante replaced by the keen hunter, scenting an unusual trail. "Vanished? From within locked safes? Are we speaking of duplicate keys, perhaps?" "Inside Confederates," stated Sherlock Holmes. "We explored those avenues exhaustively. The owners are reputable, their staff beyond reproach. Keys accounted for. The best locksmiths scrutinized the safes. They remain secure. It's as if the gems simply ceased to exist within their steel confines," said Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. A log shifted in the grate, sending a brief shower of sparks upwards. Holmes steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. "Impossible crimes are merely problems for which the solution has yet to be found. Is there any common factor linking these incidents, Inspector? However trivial it may seem," Sherlock Holmes pointed out. "Only one clear connection. Each victimized establishment. Mr. Abraham Levy's was the first recently subscribed to the new experimental pneumatic postal system operating within the district," replied Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. "The pneumatic post. I recalled articles about the subterranean tubes whisking documents between offices. Surely that's just for correspondence," Dr. John Watson replied. Its primary function is correspondence, yes, though it appears some merchants, like Mr. Levy, have employed it for rapid transfer of small valuables, assuming it secure. A peculiar coincidence, perhaps, but it remains the sole link we have identified, replied Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Holmes's gaze sharpened, eyes alight with energy. This modern marvel, this intricate mechanism, clearly captured his imagination more than any simple burglary. A pneumatic system, tubes, pressurized air, sealed canisters. Watson, the possibilities are fascinating. A crime that leverages the very arteries of progress. This suggests an adversary of uncommon ingenuity, an intelligence capable of exploiting the unseen pathways beneath our feet. Sherlock Holmes noted. Then you will take the case, Mr. Holmes, Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle replied. Take it. Inspector, I would not miss it for the world. The facts are meager but suggestive. Invisible entry, inviolate safes, and this phantom post. Yes. Watson, prepare yourself. Tomorrow morning we descend upon Hatton Garden. We must examine these premises, interview Mr. Levy, and above all, inspect the workings of this most intriguing pneumatic system, observed Sherlock Holmes. The game was afoot, its first moves promising a journey into London's burgeoning technological heart. Following Inspector Hardcastle's intriguing presentation, it was not long before Holmes declared his intention to visit the scene of the initial crime. Thus, the following morning found us rattling in a hansom cab towards Hatton Garden. The air, thick with the promise of rain, carried the scent of wet pavement and coal smoke. Even here, in the heart of London's diamond trade, a certain subdued tension seemed to hang heavy, the usual bustle tempered by whispers concerning the audacious thefts. We were admitted to the premises of Mr. Abraham Levy, a stout, balding gentleman whose face bore the pinched look of profound anxiety. His offices, though richly appointed with dark wood paneling and plush carpets that swallowed the sound of our footsteps, felt violated. He led us directly to the site of his loss, a formidable steel safe standing against one wall. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the composure he strove to maintain. As I explained to the inspector, gentlemen, impenetrable, Chubb's finest work, locked, bolted, checked by myself the night before. Yet in the morning, gone. The star of Persia necklace vanished like smoke, responded Mr. Abraham Levy. Holmes knelt before the safe, his keen eyes scanning every inch of its surface. His magnifying glass emerged with a familiar click from his pocket. He paid little attention to the lock itself, focusing instead on the surrounding floor and the wall against which it stood. The faint, rhythmic ticking of a large grandfather clock in the outer office punctuated the silence. No sign of forced entry as expected, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. No scratches upon the mechanism, no disturbance of the dust upon the hinges. He paused, eyes narrowing. Interesting, remarked Sherlock Holmes. He rose and turned his attention to the room itself. His gaze swept over the heavy desk, the leather chairs, finally settling upon a polished brass aperture set into the wall near the skirting board, connected to a network of pipes visible for a short run before disappearing into the structure. This, I presume, is the pneumatic post connection installed some months ago. Indeed, Mr. Levy confirmed, nodding. A marvel of modern convenience, Professor Flemming assured me. For secure document transfer, you understand, we send contracts, delivery confirmations. Never valuables, of course. Far too risky, Mr. Abraham Levy said. Holmes approached the brass tube opening. He ran a long, thin finger around its inner rim, the metal cool beneath his touch, then examined his fingertip minutely. He crouched lower, his breathing quiet as he peered intently at the point where the pipe met the wall. You mentioned Professor Flemming supervised the installation, Sherlock Holmes responded. He oversaw the final connections himself, yes. A most brilliant man, insisted on ensuring the integrity of the system within these walls. Mr. Abraham Levy said. And its uses, Mr. Levy, strictly documents. No small parcels, no sample stones, nothing that might test its capacity, replied Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Levy looked slightly flustered by the directness of the question. Well, perhaps on occasion, a very small, low-value sample might be sent to a trusted colleague nearby. Just for rapid appraisal, you understand. But nothing of significance. Certainly nothing like the Star of Persia, Mr. Abraham Levy replied. Holmes stood up, a thoughtful expression on his face. He tapped the pipe near the wall junction, eliciting a faint metallic echo. Observe, Watson, he said, his voice low and resonant. See here where the pipe joins the plaster. A faint scoring, almost imperceptible, and the dust pattern. It suggests this fitting has been disturbed, and relatively recently. More recently, I suspect, than the initial installation. Sherlock Holmes said. I leaned closer, but could barely discern the subtle marks he indicated. To Holmes, however, they clearly spoke volumes. Disturbed, but how could that relate to the safe? Dr. John Watson replied. Perhaps it does not relate directly to the safe's lock, Holmes replied cryptically. But it relates to this room, and this room contained the jewels. This pneumatic system, Watson, is lauded as a tool for communication, but like any tool, its purpose can be perverted. We have seen the endpoint. Now we must examine the network itself. Our next step must be to understand the veins and arteries of this modern marvel, stated Sherlock Holmes. He turned towards the anxious diamond merchant, his expression once more sharp and businesslike. Mr. Levy, you have been most helpful. We must delve deeper into the workings of this pneumatic post. Pray tell, where is the central exchange for this district located? Observed Sherlock Holmes. The question hung in the air, signaling a shift in our investigation, away from the quiet desperation of the victim's office. Our focus now turned towards the mechanism potentially behind the crime, the humming heart of the pneumatic system itself. Following our inquiries in Hatton Garden, Holmes declared our next port of call must be the very heart of this newfangled pneumatic network. Thus, we found ourselves descending a spiral iron staircase into the bowels of London, the air growing cooler, carrying the distinct metallic tang of old machinery and the low thrum of distant mechanisms. Our footsteps rang sharply on the iron grating, each step swallowed by the echoing vastness below. We emerged into a vast, vaulted chamber, a testament to modern engineering. Pipes, thick as a man's thigh, snaked across the ceiling and down the walls, converging on a complex central apparatus of gleaming brass and steel. A constant, almost hypnotic pulse filled the air, the rhythmic thumphiss of unseen pistons, the rush of compressed air, punctuated by the sharp clatter of capsules arriving and being dispatched through countless tubes. The sheer scale of the sound, bouncing off the vaulted ceiling, underscored the automated nature of the place, a marvel devoid of human warmth. Little did I appreciate then how this initial impression of organized power would later be overshadowed by the chaos and danger we would uncover within these very walls. A young man in practical, somewhat all-stained overalls approached us, wiping his hands on a rag. He was lean, with sharp features and an air of brisk efficiency, though his eyes seemed to dart about with a restless energy. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Mr. Watson, Reginald Thornton, chief engineer. His voice was clear, attempting a professional welcome that seemed slightly strained against the constant mechanical hum. Welcome to the Central Exchange. Impressive, is it not? Answered Reginald Thornton. Indeed, Mr. Thornton, Holmes replied, his gaze sweeping the intricate machinery with intense concentration. A veritable artery system beneath the city. Pray explain its function, Sherlock Holmes said. Thornton launched into an explanation, his initial enthusiasm slightly mechanical, like the system itself. He described how capsules, marked for their destination, were whisked along by air pressure, automatically sorted and shunted towards the correct district line. Each capsule, he explained, gesturing towards a newly arrived cylinder that hissed softly as its pressure equalized, finds its own way based on its coded color. Its remarkably efficient 99% accuracy. Human hands rarely need to intervene, Reginald Thornton said. Rarely, Mr. Thornton, but not never, Holmes interjected, his tone sharpening slightly. What of malfunctions, blockages, or instances requiring manual redirection? Deduced Sherlock Holmes. At this, I observed a flicker of discomfort cross Thornton's face. He shifted his weight, his gaze flicking towards shadowed archways, and for a moment the rhythmic clangor of the machinery seemed to fill an awkward silence. Well, naturally there are manual override points, he conceded, his voice losing some of its earlier crispness. At key junctions and here, engineers can access the lines. For maintenance, strict protocols are in place, you understand, answered Reginald Thornton. And these protocols, Holmes inquired, his eyebrow arching slightly, they are administered by, declared Sherlock Holmes. By myself and my certified team, he stated, regaining a measure of composure, though his hands strayed to adjust his collar. Access is logged, naturally, Reginald Thornton said. Holmes made no immediate reply, merely continuing his keen observation, his eyes tracing the path of tubes disappearing into the gloom. The relentless thump and hiss of the machinery seemed to underscore the engineer's carefully guarded unease. You mentioned accuracy, Holmes mused, turning back to Thornton. These capsules, their design is standard, I presume, observed Sherlock Holmes. Entirely. Patented design by Professor Flemming. Strong, lightweight alloy, perfectly balanced for pneumatic transit, remarked Reginald Thornton. Holmes posed several more technical inquiries, each met with Thornton's renewed, if somewhat forced, enthusiasm. As the exchange concluded, my friend offered a polite thanks for the engineer's time. As we ascended the echoing spiral staircase, the pervasive mechanical pulse gradually faded below us, replaced by the sound of our own footsteps on the iron. Interesting, Watson. The system itself is ingenious, yet its security relies heavily on the integrity of those with access to its manual hearts, the junctions and overrides. Thornton is efficient, certainly, but perhaps guards more than just the machinery, Sherlock Holmes pointed out. You suspect him, Holmes? Dr. John Watson inquired. I suspect opportunity, Watson. He mentioned Professor Flemming, the designer. It seems prudent to understand the theoretical foundations of this system, and perhaps the mind behind its creation. Our next visit must be to the professor himself, deduced Sherlock Holmes. The familiar roar of London street life assaulted our ears as we emerged. The clatter of hooves, the cries of vendors, the rumble of carts. The contrast with the echoing, mechanical underworld we had just left was stark. Yet the image of those snaking tubes, and the memory of the engineer's guarded voice against the constant hiss and clatter, remained firmly fixed in my mind. Our hansom deposited us before a tall, narrow building sandwiched between a tobacconist and a printer's shop. The air here carried the faint, sharp tang of chemicals, overlaying the usual London mixture of coal smoke and damp. Following Holmes's decisive lead, we ascended a flight of echoing wooden stairs, the sounds of the street diminishing below us, replaced by a low, intermittent humming noise from above. Professor Augustus Flemming greeted us at the door of his laboratory, a man whose intense gaze seemed somewhat at odds with his slightly stooped shoulders and ink-stained fingers. His laboratory was a controlled chaos of gleaming brass instruments, glass retorts bubbling over low flames, and precarious stacks of papers and journals. The humming emanated from a complex electrical apparatus in one corner, wires snaking across the floor. His voice was dry, precise. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, an unexpected visit. Please come in, though I fear the place is hardly fit for visitors. My work, you understand, responded Professor Augustus Flemming. Professor Flemming, your work is precisely why we are here, Holmes replied, his eyes already sweeping the room, taking in every detail. The pneumatic post system, a marvel of modern engineering, yet seemingly porous, remarked Sherlock Holmes. Fleming gestured towards a large schematic pinned to a board, depicting the intricate network of tubes beneath the city. A frown creased his brow. Porous, Fleming echoed. A harsh term, Mr. Holmes, but perhaps not entirely inaccurate. Theoretically, the system is sound, relying on differences in air pressure, automated routing. It's elegant physics, truly. He paused, gesturing vaguely. But theory and practice, well, they often diverge. Such complexity inevitably invites unforeseen vulnerabilities, Professor Augustus Flemming said. Such as, Holmes prompted, his tone deceptively mild, deduced Sherlock Holmes. The junctions, primarily, Fleming murmured, tapping the schematic. They are automated, yes, but could be vulnerable to precisely timed interference. He shifted his focus. And the capsules themselves. Their current design was a compromise, balancing strength and lightness. I have, in fact, been researching superior alloys, responded Professor Augustus Flemming. Holmes leaned closer, his interest visibly piqued. Indeed, alloys with specific properties, perhaps, observed Sherlock Holmes. Precisely, Fleming confirmed, his eyes lighting up slightly as he warmed to his subject. Lighter, stronger materials, and crucially, alloys with unique properties, specifically non-magnetic qualities and a particular density. These could improve transit speeds and reduce friction inside the tubes, Professor Augustus Flemming replied. He gestured towards a stack of journals, a flicker of academic pride crossing his face. I presented some purely theoretical ideas on this potential molecular structures, nothing concrete, at an engineering symposium a few months back. Just exploring possibilities, you understand. Blue sky thinking, as they say, Professor Augustus Flemming said. A public symposium, Professor. Holmes's voice held a new sharpness. Open to all attendees, were materials distributed, notes taken freely. Sherlock Holmes responded. Fleming hesitated. Watson noticed a flicker of unease cross the professor's features. Fleming waved a dismissive hand, though the gesture lacked conviction. Well, yes, it was rather open. The annual convivial for applied mechanics. Theoretical concepts, mind you, far removed from practical application. Highly abstract, said Professor Augustus Flemming. Abstract concepts, Holmes observed coolly, have a way of becoming concrete in the wrong hands. He paused, his gaze sharpening. Were there no other avenues through which such specialized knowledge might have? Strayed, declared Sherlock Holmes. The professor shifted uncomfortably. His voice dropped slightly. There was the laboratory relocation, about 6 months ago. It was utter chaos, I'm afraid, said Professor Augustus Flemming. He ran a hand through his already untidy hair, avoiding Holmes's direct gaze. During the move, some early research portfolios, very preliminary sketches, mind you, exploring material densities and related properties, purely theoretical might have been. Misplaced. It seems unlikely they held anything of immediate practical value. But, he trailed off, the unspoken possibility hanging heavy in the air, thick with the laboratory's chemical scent. So, Professor, Holmes summarized, his voice cutting through the laboratory's low hum, we have theoretical vulnerabilities which you acknowledge. We have research into unique alloys, specifically non-magnetic, with particular density discussed openly at a symposium. Sherlock Holmes said. Holmes paused, his gaze sharp, allowing the weight of his words to settle. And we have the potential loss of unsecured early notes possibly detailing those very properties. A chain, he concluded, of most unfortunate possibilities, explained Sherlock Holmes. He straightened up, his examination seemingly complete. The specific properties Fleming had mentioned, non-magnetic, particular density, clearly resonated with some theory forming in my friend's agile mind. Thank you for your candor, Professor. It has been most illuminating. Come, Watson, declared Sherlock Holmes. As we descended the stairs, leaving the faint humming and chemical scent behind, Holmes remained silent for a time. Then, as the sounds of the London street rose to meet us once more, he spoke. The alloy, Watson, Holmes mused, his voice low and thoughtful. Non-magnetic specific density, properties that could allow a capsule to behave unpredictably within the tubes, perhaps even bypass standard sorting mechanisms if manipulated correctly. He glanced at me. The theoretical knowledge was potentially available, however carelessly guarded. Now, the question becomes, who possesses the peculiar skill set required to turn Fleming's academic concepts into a practical criminal enterprise? Sherlock Holmes said. His words hung in the air as we stepped out into the grey afternoon, leaving me to ponder the nature of the minds capable of such intricate, technologically adept villainy. The stage was set, it seemed, for understanding the perpetrators themselves. The grey edifice of Scotland Yard loomed before us, a bastion of order amidst the swirling London fog. Within its echoing corridors, the muted sounds of official business, the distant clang of a gate, the hurried tread of boots on stone floors, the faint, rhythmic ticking of a telegraph machine formed a constant, low hum. We were shown into a modest office, sparsely furnished but impeccably tidy, where Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle awaited us, standing beside a desk laden with papers. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, thank you for coming so promptly. I have collated the intelligence regarding the group we suspect is involved, the Clockwork Gang, responded Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. She gestured towards a series of reports. Holmes stepped forward, his eyes already scanning the documents with hawk-like intensity. The Clockwork Gang, Mr. Holmes, Inspector Hardcastle began, her tone grave, are renowned for their mechanical aptitude. Safe cracking, intricate lock-picking, these were their usual pursuits. But recently, their activities have taken a concerning turn. Over the past few months, we've documented thefts of highly specialized components. Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle replied. Components, Inspector. His voice held a new note of keen interest. Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. Indeed, not merely tools for burglary. High-pressure pneumatic valves, precision timing mechanisms, even specific types of resilient hosing. Items seemingly unrelated to acquiring jewelry, wouldn't you agree? Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle replied. Holmes straightened, his brow furrowed in concentration. He tapped a long finger against one of the reports, the soft sound punctuating the thoughtful silence that had descended upon the room. For a moment, only the measured ticking of the mantelpiece clock could be heard, marking the passage of time as the great detective's mind worked. Valves, timers, hosing. Inspector, this paints a picture far more elaborate than simple smash and grab. The Clockwork Gang possess precisely the skills required not merely to bypass security, but to manipulate the very infrastructure of this new pneumatic system, observed Sherlock Holmes. Watson watched him, sensing the rapid connections forming in his friend's mind. Manipulate it? How, Holmes? Dr. John Watson added. He turned, his gaze sharp. Consider the elements, Watson. Professor Flemming, whose potentially misplaced notes detailed unique alloys ideal for durable, custom capsules, replied Sherlock Holmes. The very material needed for those mysterious capsules we suspect, Dr. John Watson inquired. Precisely. Then there is Mr. Thornton, the engineer with intimate knowledge of the system's operational controls and access points, Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. Providing the how to Fleming's what perhaps, wondered Dr. John Watson. Holmes nodded, acknowledging Watson's grasp of the situation. An apt summary. And now Inspector Hardcastle reveals a gang stealing components perfectly suited for modifying pressure, rerouting capsules, declared Sherlock Holmes. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air before continuing. or perhaps even introducing their own devices into the network, Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. He paced the small room again, the rhythmic tap of his shoes on the floorboards a counterpoint to the ticking clock. The nature of these stolen parts, Inspector, he continued, his tone hardening slightly, suggests an ambition beyond mere theft. Why steal high-pressure valves if only to extract jewels? Why precision timers? Sherlock Holmes noted. He fixed his gaze upon the inspector, awaiting her reaction, though none was immediately forthcoming. Good heavens, Holmes, what purpose could such items serve beyond simple robbery? Dr. John Watson inquired. It hints at a desire to control, Watson, to disrupt, Sherlock Holmes noted. His voice lowered slightly, adding gravity to his next words. Perhaps on a scale we have yet to comprehend, they are not just using the post, they may be weaponizing it, Sherlock Holmes pointed out. Her expression was serious. A sobering thought, Mr. Holmes. If they can manipulate the system with such finesse, their potential for causing chaos is significant, responded Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Holmes turned from the inspector to face us both. Precisely. Theory and motive align, but we lack tangible proof. The thefts provide circumstantial links, Fleming's alloy a potential material, Thornton's position an opportunity, explained Sherlock Holmes. He gestured dismissively, as if weighing the evidence in his hands. But the connection remains purely inferential, Sherlock Holmes responded. He stopped before the window, gazing out at the grey London afternoon. The muffled sounds of the street seemed distant. Our next step must be to move beyond speculation. We need physical evidence from within the pneumatic network itself. Evidence of tampering, illicit devices, or traces of these specialized components being deployed. Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. Into the tunnels themselves. A daunting prospect, Holmes, wondered Dr. John Watson. Indeed, Watson, prepare yourself. We must delve into the belly of this mechanical beast, Sherlock Holmes noted. His words hung in the air, promising a descent into the hidden workings of the city's newest marvel, a place where tiny capsules whispered secrets and unseen mechanisms held the key to the mystery. The faint ticking from the telegraph machine seemed, for a moment, to echo the workings of a far more sinister clockwork. Following Inspector Hardcastle's departure, a thoughtful silence descended upon our Baker Street rooms, broken only by the low crackle of the fire and the distant, mournful hoot of a barge on the fog-shrouded Thames. Holmes, however, was far from inactive. He paced the hearthrug, his brow furrowed, occasionally pausing to consult the complex diagrams of the pneumatic network Professor Flemming had provided, alongside notes taken during our interviews. His voice, when he finally spoke, was sharp with concentration. The Clockwork Gang's acquisitions, Watson the high-pressure valves, the timing devices, they speak not merely of theft, but of control. Add to that Fleming's admission of, shall we say, operational quirks in his system, particularly pressure fluctuations near certain junctions, deduced Sherlock Holmes. He tapped a point on the sprawling diagram. Outside, the rumble of an omnibus passing over the cobbles momentarily filled the air, a brief punctuation to the quiet intensity within. These known anomalies, Watson, are not random flaws. They represent potential vulnerabilities. If one could precisely time an intervention coinciding with a pressure drop or a known switching delay. He trailed off, his eyes gleaming. Explained Sherlock Holmes. You mean force a capsule out of the main conduit, Dr. John Watson replied. Precisely. Not a catastrophic breach, but a subtle ejection, a misdirection. We must examine the physical outlets near these specific junctions. Fetch your coat and stoutest boots, Watson. We have some searching to do, explained Sherlock Holmes. Our search took us through a labyrinth of narrow city lanes and grimy service alleys, locations dictated by Holmes's deductions regarding the pneumatic network's most vulnerable points. The air was thick with the smell of damp brickwork and coal smoke, punctuated by the clatter of unseen machinery and the occasional shout of a costermonger. Near a particularly shadowed junction box, tucked away behind a bustling mercantile exchange, the constant low hiss of the pneumatic system seemed more pronounced, an underground river flowing beneath our feet. Holmes directed my attention to the ground. There, nearly hidden by years of grime and discarded rubbish, lay a tarnished brass outlet hatch. "Look closely, Watson, amongst the refuse." I knelt, my boots sinking slightly into the mud. At first I saw nothing but discarded papers and grime. Then a faint glint caught my eye. Holmes produced his pocket lens. There, half concealed by a sodden scrap of newsprint, lay not one, but three minuscule metallic cylinders, far smaller than the standard postal capsules. Back in the brighter light of 221B, Holmes laid the tiny objects upon a sheet of white paper. They were exquisite examples of miniature engineering, fashioned from a metal that possessed an unusual, almost unnatural luster. The faint scent of ozone, perhaps from their passage through the tubes, still clung to them. He prodded one gently with a needle. "Observe the material, Watson. Does it not strike you as familiar? This is undoubtedly Fleming's unique alloy, resistant to pressure, difficult to machine, and quite distinctive." Sherlock Holmes responded. He adjusted his lens, his breathing steady and focused, the only sound besides the ticking clock on the mantelpiece. "And here, note these minuscule protrusions and tiny moving parts. They are not decorative. They are mechanisms, Watson, designed with incredible precision. See how this tiny lever might engage with the sorting gates within the junctions, and this calibrated spring." His voice grew lower, more intense. "These are not mere containers. They are keys designed to interact with the system's internal workings." "To divert other capsules?" I asked, the chilling implication beginning to dawn. Dr. John Watson commented. "Precisely. These devices, introduced covertly, could hijack the sorting mechanisms. Imagine a capsule carrying Levy's diamonds, suddenly shunted to a dead end or ejected at an accessible point." Sherlock Holmes noted. I stared at the tiny, gleaming objects, trying to fully grasp the audacity and ingenuity of the scheme. "But the implications go further, Watson. Deployed en masse, they could trigger false signals, reroute messages, even cause system-wide blockages. The potential for chaos far exceeds mere jewel theft," Sherlock Holmes said. The pieces clicked into place with chilling clarity. Fleming's unique materials, the Clockwork Gang's technical skills, and the specific vulnerabilities of the pneumatic network. Flemming provides the unique substance, the gang provides the nefarious skill. But someone needed operational access. Someone who understands the schedules, the monitoring systems, the precise timing required. His gaze fixed on the diagram once more, specifically on the central control schematics. "Our next conversation, Watson, must be with the man who holds the reins of this entire technological marvel, Mr. Reginald Thornton," Sherlock Holmes noted. The interrogation room at Scotland Yard possessed a starkness designed to amplify unease. Plain walls met a heavy table scarred by previous encounters. Three sturdy chairs completed the sparse furnishings, all illuminated by the unsteady flicker of a gas lamp which cast long, dancing shadows across the floor. Outside, the persistent drizzle of a London evening whispered against the window pane, a soft counterpoint to the tension within. Inspector Hardcastle sat opposite the door, her posture erect, observing the proceedings with a keen, steady gaze. Holmes stood near the window, his back partially turned, a silhouette against the dreary light. Before us sat Reginald Thornton, the young engineer. His ambition now seemed utterly overshadowed by a palpable fear. His collar was askew, and his fingers drummed a nervous rhythm upon the tabletop. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet yet carried an edge that cut through the room's tension. He turned slowly from the window, his eyes fixing Thornton with an unnerving intensity. Mr. Thornton, we have examined the anomalies within the pneumatic network. We have also recovered certain artifacts, Sherlock Holmes noted. Specifically, miniature capsules constructed from an unusual alloy, Professor Flemming's alloy, I believe found near junctions exhibiting peculiar pressure drops. Junctions under your operational purview, explained Sherlock Holmes. Thornton shifted uncomfortably, his chair scraping slightly on the floorboards. He avoided Holmes' direct stare and swallowed hard, the sound audible in the quiet room. His attempt at nonchalance failed, his voice tight. Anomalies happen. The system is complex. As for capsules, vagrants perhaps, children playing, Reginald Thornton replied. Vagrants, Holmes countered smoothly, employing advanced metallurgical compounds and precision engineering. He paused, his tone sharpening. Come, sir, let us dispense with improbable fictions. Your position gave you unique access, access that proved tragically tempting when coupled with certain, he leaned in slightly, financial pressures, observed Sherlock Holmes. At the mention of finances, Thornton flinched as if struck. His face, already pale, seemed to lose another shade of color. His gaze darted towards Inspector Hardcastle, then back to Holmes, finally dropping to his trembling hands resting on the table. A choked sound escaped him. They force me, I swear it. His voice cracked, losing its earlier defensiveness and taking on a desperate, pleading tone. My debts, the gaming tables they knew. They threatened exposure, ruin, worse, said Reginald Thornton. Inspector Hardcastle leaned forward slightly, her voice firm but not unkind. Who threatened you, Mr. Thornton? The Clockwork Gang, Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle answered. He nodded frantically, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow with a shaky hand. Yes, they didn't ask for much at first. Information, schedules. Then they needed more, specific access, responded Reginald Thornton. Precisely what access did you provide? Holmes pressed, his tone sharpening again. Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. His confession tumbled out now, words laced with fear and shame. Override codes. For specific junctions, the major ones, controlling high-volume traffic across the district. And schedules. Times when I could ensure the monitoring sensors at those junctions were temporarily blinded. Just for moments, they said. Long enough for a diversion, a rerouting. Reginald Thornton said. Blinded, but Thornton, those junctions. The potential consequences, Dr. John Watson commented. Holmes listened intently, his expression unreadable as Thornton spoke. The pieces were falling into place. The engineered capsules, the compromised junctions, the means to bypass security undetected. You provided the means to manipulate the very heart of the system at critical points, he stated, less a question than a confirmation. Did they confide their ultimate purpose? Was it merely jewel theft? Sherlock Holmes responded. He shook his head vigorously, his eyes wide. No, I swear, I don't know their grand design. They spoke only of needing brief windows, of bypassing specific deliveries. But the codes I gave them, the junctions they specified. Yes, strategically, they were vital, controlling significant portions of the network. I suspected it was more than simple theft, but I was trapped, Reginald Thornton replied. A heavy silence descended. The rhythmic patter of rain against the glass and the loud scratch of Inspector Hardcastle's pen in her ledger punctuated the stillness. Thornton slumped in his chair with a weary sigh, the confession having seemingly drained him of all energy. Holmes finally moved from the window, stepping closer to the table. His voice regained its customary briskness. Your cooperation, though belated, Mr. Thornton, is noted. Inspector, we now understand the mechanism. We know how they manipulate the system, and crucially, where their interventions occur, Sherlock Holmes said. He glanced at me, a spark of anticipation in his eyes. Watson, our next step is clear. We must return to the pneumatic post-central hub. With knowledge of these compromised junctions and sensor schedules, the system logs will no longer be a baffling maze, but a map leading directly to the gang's activities, deduced Sherlock Holmes. He turned towards the door, the promise of imminent discovery radiating from him. The engineer's secret, wrung out in this dreary room, had provided the key. Now, the intricate patterns within the tubes themselves awaited deciphering. The chill air of the pneumatic exchange hub felt different upon our return. The previous explorations had been tinged with uncertainty, a groping in the mechanical dark. Now, armed with the coerced confession of young Thornton, our purpose was sharp, focused. The rhythmic hiss and occasional clang of capsules arriving and departing seemed less a marvel of modern ingenuity and more the frantic pulse of a compromised system. Inspector Hardcastle stood beside me, her gaze sweeping the vast chamber, while Holmes, already hunched over a bank of pressure gauges and logbooks near junction 7B, seemed oblivious to all else. Her voice, though quiet, carried easily over the low thrum of the machinery. So, Mr. Holmes, Thornton's information confirms they could bypass sensors at will. But how does that translate from isolated thefts to something more? Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle said. Holmes straightened abruptly, tapping a long finger against a complex chart depicting the network's arteries. The paper rustled dryly in the otherwise damp air. It is not merely the ability to bypass, Inspector, but the pattern of its application. Observe. He traced lines on the chart. Thornton provided times, dates, junctions. When we cross-reference these with the system's own logs, note the pressure fluctuations here, and the capsule transit records there, a disturbing picture emerges, declared Sherlock Holmes. He moved to a nearby console, its brass levers gleaming under the gaslight. The faint click of relays accompanied his adjustments as he indicated specific entries in the logs. Here, at Junction 4A, precisely when the sensors were disabled last Tuesday, the logs show not just one unauthorized access, but a flurry of coordinated adjustments across connected lines. Small changes, yes, but timed perfectly together. It's like watching multiple puppets pulled by the same hidden strings. The same pattern repeats here at 11C and again at 7B. Far too elaborate an orchestration for merely diverting a single jewel container, remarked Sherlock Holmes. Coordinated diversions, then, I ventured, trying to grasp the scale. Dr. John Watson said. Precisely, Watson. Diversions on a grand scale. These junctions Thornton identified are not merely convenient, they are strategic nerve centers. Control them, coordinate their manipulation, and you control the flow of information, or perhaps misinformation, across a significant portion of the city. This is not about pilfering diamonds, it is practice. It is reconnaissance for a far larger objective, declared Sherlock Holmes. His eyes darted across the intricate map, brow furrowed in intense calculation. The hum of the great engines below swelled, underscoring the gravity of his words. Suddenly, a distant, heavy clang reverberated through the cavernous space, a maintenance hatch secured, heightening the tension. A larger objective, her tone was sharp, alert. Disruption, sabotage, replied Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Or control, Holmes murmured, almost to himself. Imagine the possibilities. But look here. He pointed again, tracing the paths of the anomalous activities on the chart. See how these phantom signals, these coordinated pressure adjustments, consistently vector towards this sector, declared Sherlock Holmes. His finger rested on a section of the map marked as Spur Line Delta decommissioned, an old, disused branch of the network, supposedly sealed off years ago. Yet, the energy signatures, the subtle pressure adjustments necessary for these complex reroutings, all converge towards it. It is the only logical terminus point that explains the observed patterns across all compromised junctions. Sherlock Holmes noted. Their base of operations, I breathed, remarked Dr. John Watson. Undoubtedly. hidden in plain sight, utilizing the very system they intend to manipulate. They are not merely thieves, Inspector Watson. They are engineers of chaos, using Fleming's genius, twisted by Thornton's weakness, for potentially devastating ends, explained Sherlock Holmes. Inspector Hardcastle nodded, her expression grim but resolute. The sounds of the hub seemed to fade as the implications settled upon us. Then we must move quickly. Spur line Delta. We raid it at once. We need to know the full extent of this larger objective before they can execute it. Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle answered. Indeed, Holmes agreed, his voice regaining its familiar crispness. Prepare your men, Inspector. We are no longer hunting jewel thieves. We are preventing a catastrophe engineered by Clockwork. He turned towards the exit, his stride purposeful. Come, Watson. The game is most certainly afoot, and the clock is ticking louder than ever, Sherlock Holmes noted. As we followed Holmes from the echoing chamber, leaving the ceaseless hiss of the tubes behind us, I felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with a profound sense of unease. We knew where the Clockwork Gang nested, but the true nature of the beast lurking within remained terrifyingly unclear. The disused pneumatic spur terminated, as Holmes's deductions suggested, in a grim brick warehouse near Aldgate. A cold drizzle slicked the cobblestones, muffling distant traffic. The air hung thick with coal smoke and damp decay. Inspector Hardcastle had deployed her men with quiet efficiency, surrounding the building while we three Holmes, the inspector and myself, approached the heavy, paint-peeled side door. His voice was a low whisper against the damp brickwork. The activity patterns indicated nocturnal work, concentrated here. If Thornton spoke true, this is their nest. Ready yourselves, remarked Sherlock Holmes. The lock surrendered with a splintering crack as a stout constable applied his lever, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the confined space. Holmes pushed the door inward. Flickering gaslight revealed a scene of chaotic industry. The air hummed with unseen mechanisms and the sharp tang of machine oil. It was a workshop. Benches were strewn with brass fittings, clockwork components, and pneumatic tubing sections. Modified capsules lay disassembled. Our entrance had not gone unnoticed. Three burly figures sprang up from behind a lathe, faces grim. A fourth, leaner man darted towards a shadowed corner. Her voice rang out, clear and commanding. Scotland Yard, stand fast, Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle replied. Defiance met her command. A heavy wrench clanged against the wall near my head. Constables surged in, the workshop erupting into a melee of shouts and blows. Holmes moved with astonishing speed, disabling a ruffian with his stick. Hardcastle calmly directed her men amidst the brawl. In moments, the three thugs were subdued, groaning amidst scattered tools. But the fourth man, the sharp-featured one, had vanished. A heavy iron trapdoor, previously concealed beneath sacking in the corner he had run towards, stood ajar, revealing dark steps leading downwards. He knelt swiftly beside a workbench, ignoring the departing footsteps from below. His eyes scanned the items laid out. Leave him for now, Inspector. He is merely the hand. The brain's work is here, deduced Sherlock Holmes. Hardcastle joined him, her expression hardening. Recovered jewels gleamed dully in a canvas bag. Beside them lay more sinister items, specialized tools to interfere with pneumatic junctions, delicate probes, modified gauges, and most damningly, rolled schematics. Holmes carefully unrolled a large diagram. It showed a vast network of London's pneumatic lines, key junctions marked in red. He laid out not only the schematic, but also one of the modified capsules and a peculiar set of probes beside it, drawing Hardcastle's attention. He tapped the schematic, his voice low but resonant. Observe, Inspector. This schematic details their infiltration points across the city network. See these red markings. And these tools, he indicated the delicate probes and modified gauges, are precisely engineered to bypass the standard junction seals and reroute traffic, just as the energy fluctuations and pressure anomalies at the central hub suggested. The capsules themselves, he picked one up, demonstrating its unusual construction, are designed to carry not jewels, but potentially corrosive agents or disruptive devices undetected. The jewel thefts were merely practice, or perhaps funding. Their true objective, audacious, terrifyingly so. Not mere disruption, but the potential to cripple London's communication, perhaps deliver far worse through the very arteries of its commerce. These tools, these plans, designed for systemic sabotage, stated Sherlock Holmes. She examined a modified capsule, her brow furrowed. Citywide sabotage, turning Fleming's creation into a weapon against London itself. The audacity is staggering. We must understand the full extent of this threat, replied Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Precisely. The Clockwork Gang is far more than thieves. They possess technical skill and ruthless ambition. The escaped man may be their leader, but the mind capable of devising this application of Fleming's work. He paused, picking up a peculiar brass valve. Requires a deeper understanding. We have the means, Inspector. Now we must confront the potential source, stated Sherlock Holmes. He carefully wrapped the captured components and schematics. The evidence confirmed his analysis. The air felt colder now, the hum replaced by the grim reality of the plot. Our next step pointed towards the brilliant, perhaps careless, inventor. The air within Professor Fleming's workshop hung thick with the sharp tang of ozone and the fainter, metallic scent of cooling solder. Glass vials lined the benches, catching the gaslight in fractured gleams. Intricate brass mechanisms lay scattered amidst blueprints and wire coils. A low, intermittent humming emanated from some unseen device in the corner, a constant reminder of the restless innovation housed within these walls. Holmes, however, seemed oblivious to the clutter, his attention fixed solely upon the man before us. Professor Augustus Flemming, his usual academic detachment replaced by a hunted look, stood near a lathe, wiping his hands absently on a stained apron. His eyes darted between Holmes and myself, betraying a profound unease. His voice, though quiet, filled the workshop, cutting through the low hum. Professor Flemming, we recovered this from the lair of the individuals misusing your pneumatic system, Sherlock Holmes noted. Holmes placed upon the workbench the specially modified pneumatic capsule we had retrieved, the one designed not for mail, but for menace. Its dull gleam seemed sinister under the gaslight. Flemming flinched almost imperceptibly, his gaze fixed upon it. He swallowed, his tone defensive. My alloy. Yes, I told you it was stolen. A misfortune, certainly, but hardly my direct responsibility. Thieves are thieves, replied Professor Augustus Flemming. Indeed, but their ambitions extended far beyond mere jewel theft, facilitated by a strong container, Holmes countered, his manner hardening slightly. He then unfurled the schematics discovered in the Clockwork Gang's hideout. Observe these, Professor. They detail not just the use of your alloy, but the precise manipulation of control valves, pressure regulators, adaptations of mechanisms derived directly from your advanced system designs. Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. Flemming leaned closer, his initial defensiveness beginning to crumble as his eyes traced the intricate lines on the paper. He picked up the schematics, his fingers trembling slightly. The workshop fell silent save for the faint whirring and the rustle of the large sheet. These are not mere modifications for theft, Professor, Holmes pressed, his voice low and resonant. They are blueprints for sabotage, for seizing control of junctions, redirecting pressure cascades, potentially crippling communication across the entire city. Your specific engineering principles, twisted to enable widespread disruption, remarked Sherlock Holmes. A strangled sound escaped Flemming. He dropped the schematics onto the bench as if they had burned him. The color drained from his face, replaced by a ghastly pallor. He saw it now, not just the theft of a material, but the perversion of his intellectual progeny, the specific, intricate workings of his mind turned towards chaos. His voice was barely a whisper, choked with a sudden, profound horror. My God! The differential actuators, the harmonic resonance frequency. They understood. They saw how to turn it against itself. It wasn't just the strength, it was the control. Professor Augustus Flemming answered. He sank onto a nearby stool, burying his face in his hands. The weight of his unintended contribution, the sheer scale of the potential disaster facilitated by the specific misapplication of his work, seemed to crush him. Gone was the defensive inventor. In his place sat a man consumed by guilt. He looked up, his eyes filled with a desperate resolve I had not seen before. My carelessness, my focus solely on the possibilities, never truly weighing the potential for such calculated malice. I must stop them. Holmes, I must help you prevent this. The transformation was complete and utterly genuine. Driven now by a fierce sense of responsibility, Fleming snatched up a fresh sheet of paper and a pencil, his mind already racing. His voice was urgent, alive with purpose. The central hub, the master control valves. If they intend to initiate sequence from there using my pressure modulation techniques, there might be a way, a counter frequency, a specific pressure spike timed precisely. Yes, it could overload their modified capsule's receiver, force it into a shunt loop, Professor Augustus Flemming replied. He began sketching rapidly, muttering equations and technical jargon that were largely lost on me. The pencil flew across the page, driven by a newfound urgency. Holmes watched him intently, nodding slowly, recognizing the shift. The air crackled now not just with ozone, but with the energy of invention turned towards defense. Excellent, Professor. Refine this. We shall need a precise method, deployable within the central exchange itself. Time is decidedly of the essence, Sherlock Holmes said. As we left, the professor hunched over his bench, consumed by his urgent task. I couldn't help but reflect on the weight of responsibility that had descended upon us all. Stepping out into the London evening, we found the fog closing in, muffling the city's sounds. Yet even as the world grew indistinct around us, our path forward crystallized, a desperate gambit to be played out deep within the humming heart of the pneumatic network. The central exchange hub of the pneumatic system was a cavern unlike any I had ever entered. Beneath London streets, it thrummed with low, insistent energy. A vast network of brass tubes crisscrossed the vaulted ceiling, converging on a complex central mechanism of gleaming pistons and switching levers. The air tasted metallic, filled with the constant hiss and sigh of compressed air, punctuated by the occasional sharp thump of a capsule arriving or departing. We stood upon a metal gantry, shadowed and expectant. Professor Flemming, pale but resolute, made final adjustments to a junction box near the main console. His hands, though steady now, betrayed the nervous tension that gripped us all. He had devised a clever modification. He explained it with urgent clarity. It was a pressure-sensitive shunt. Its purpose? To divert any capsule sent from this specific terminal. Instead of its intended destination, the capsule would land in a sealed receiving chamber, hidden behind a maintenance panel. The shunt is calibrated, Mr. Holmes, just as we discussed. Thornton's information was invaluable. He pinpointed not only the leader's preferred console for critical transmissions, but also the specific initiation sequence for the sabotage protocol. If he sends that command capsule from this terminal, using that sequence, the pressure lock engages. It diverts the capsule straight to our shunt. To the ear, it should sound like, well, a minor glitch. Nothing alarming, Professor Flemming answered. Precisely, a small fault, just enough to capture our quarry without raising suspicion. Inspector, are your men covering the exits? Sherlock Holmes noted. They are in position, Mr. Holmes. This sector is sealed. We await your word. answered Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Silence fell. The ceaseless whisper and hum of machinery stretched minutes into an age. I found myself straining to hear, interpreting every distant rumble from above, every clank within the hub, as a potential harbinger of action. Then we heard it distinct, purposeful footsteps, echoing on the iron staircase, leading down into the chamber. A figure emerged from the gloom, cloaked and moving with an air of confident authority towards the central console. He paid us no mind, hidden as we were in the shadows above. Reaching the controls, he produced a standard pneumatic capsule, but one whose metallic sheen seemed subtly different. With swift, practiced movements, he began keying instructions into the console. The final move. He intends to dispatch the master control sequence precisely from that console and using the initiation pattern Thornton identified. Flemming, stand ready. Sherlock Holmes observed sharply. With a practiced motion, the man slotted the capsule into the dispatch tube. A sharp hiss of pressure filled the air, followed by an unexpected, abrupt clank from Fleming's modified junction box. The usual smooth whoosh of departure was replaced by a muffled thud. The man at the console stiffened, frowning at the machinery. He struck a button again, expecting the system to clear, but nothing happened. Before he could react further, Holmes stepped out of the shadows onto the gantry's edge. "An unexpected delay in your schedule, I believe," declared Sherlock Holmes. The man spun around, his face contorted with fury and surprise. Simultaneously, Inspector Hardcastle and two constables emerged from another alcove, blocking his only retreat. He made a desperate lunge, not for escape, but towards a large emergency lever marked System Purge. But Holmes was faster. A blur of motion, and he had intercepted the man, a sharp struggle ensuing that ended almost as quickly as it began. The leader of the Clockwork Gang was pinned, his face pressed against the cold metal floor. "Secure him," Hardcastle commanded, her voice cutting through the mechanical din, said Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. While the constables applied restraints, Flemming quickly retrieved the diverted capsule from the hidden chamber. Inside, nestled amongst complex wiring, lay not only the mechanism for widespread sabotage, but also the last of the stolen diamonds, presumably intended as a final payload or bribe. Holmes held the capsule aloft. "Your plan was audacious, I grant you, not merely theft but chaos. Tell me, what precisely did you intend?" remarked Sherlock Holmes. The captured leader, breathing heavily, spat onto the floor. His voice was rough with defeated rage. "Meddling amateurs, this grand machine, London's very pulse, it was to be ours. Every whisper, every coin changing hands, every state secret rerouted at our command. Imagine the glorious chaos. False orders flying, panic gripping the markets. London paralyzed, dancing like a puppet on our strings. This progress you champion, merely the mechanism of its own destruction, wound by our hands," responded Clockwork Gang leader. His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of near disaster. The constant thrum of the machinery around us suddenly seemed less a sound of progress and more a reminder of the vulnerability that came with it. The capture was made, the jewels recovered, but the leader's chilling declaration painted a stark picture of the potential catastrophe we had only narrowly averted. The Baker Street rooms felt unusually still after the whirlwind conclusion to the Pneumatic Post affair. Outside, the late afternoon drizzle tapped a persistent rhythm against the window panes, a grey counterpoint to the fire crackling merrily in the hearth. Inspector Hardcastle sat opposite Holmes, a thoughtful expression upon her face, whilst I occupied my customary armchair, contemplating the near catastrophe we had averted beneath the city streets. It is a curious thing, progress. We build marvels, tubes that whisk messages beneath our feet at incredible speeds, yet we invariably find they become conduits for marvels of villainy also, replied Sherlock Holmes. "Indeed, Mr. Holmes. Professor Fleming's genius was undeniable. Yet his blindness to its potential misuse nearly brought London's commerce and communication to its knees. The Clockwork Gang merely weaponized an invention conceived with, perhaps, naive intentions, answered Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle. Holmes steepled his fingers, his gaze distant. The firelight glinted in his eyes. Naive, perhaps, Inspector, or perhaps simply too focused on the what and not the who. Fleming saw gears, pressures, velocities. He failed to calculate the human element. He did not foresee a Reginald Thornton, remarked Sherlock Holmes. Young Thornton, a tragic figure in his way, ambitious, certainly, but preyed upon. His desire for advancement made him susceptible to the gang's manipulations, remarked Dr. John Watson. Precisely, Watson, he replied sharply, turning his keen eyes upon me. Remember those pressure log discrepancies. Thornton's teething troubles aligned perfectly with the jewel thefts. He wasn't overlooking errors, but creating weaknesses for the diverted capsules. Ambition was his motive, the gang his method, and Fleming's system his means. Sherlock Holmes noted. He leaned back, the energy receding slightly from his voice. The true danger wasn't just stolen jewels. Their leader revealed a greater threat. Control of the network meant control of information, the power to cripple the city. It elevates mere thievery to strategic sabotage, explained Sherlock Holmes. That highlights our constant challenge at Scotland Yard. Technology outpaces regulation. Security often lags behind the ingenuity of criminals. This pneumatic system, hailed as a triumph, became a vulnerability on an unprecedented scale. Inspector Evelyn Hardcastle answered. The rain's rhythm underscored her point. Below, a hansom cab splashed through puddles on Baker Street, its familiar sound oddly distant from our complex discussion. So, the march of progress requires ever greater vigilance, Dr. John Watson said. It requires understanding, Watson, that every advancement casts a shadow. Every network built to connect can also divide or control. Every tool meant to help can be turned against us, replied Sherlock Holmes. The pneumatic post did not create greed or ambition, but it provided them with a terrifyingly efficient new avenue. Our task, it seems, is not to halt progress, but to perpetually anticipate and counter the darkness that rides alongside it, declared Sherlock Holmes. A log shifted in the grate, sending up a brief shower of sparks. Holmes remained silent for a moment, lost in thought. The case was closed, the gang dismantled, but the questions raised by the affair concerning invention, ambition, and the intricate, often perilous, relationship between humanity and its creations lingered in the quiet room, carried on the scent of coal smoke and damp London air.